I'm going to bring up our panelists. And here, of course, is our beloved Patrick McCollum, who
Yes, Patrick.
just gotten back from another trip to visit the Kogi people. So we definitely want to hear about that. And you also met this woman in the video, Susan, who it'll be really wonderful to have you with us. Thank you, Susan.
Hi, Susan.
Yeah, Patrick. Hi, Susan.
Yeah.
And then these wonderful videos that we saw with I Am Sophia.
Yes, Sophia. Hello, Sophia.
Hi, guys.
Thank you. That's
Hi,
outrageous.
Star family.
I love it, Star Family.
And here's Leigh McCloskely,
And Leigh.
who I think we caught just in the middle of a bite right there. Caught you.
Actually, yes, you did.
Leigh checking in from the hieroglyph of the human soul. Look, that's where he is.
And
Right
we
now.
just want to say hello to our blessed friends. We've
Yeah.
known all of you for a decade now or so, and we're just blessed to have you come on board and share your wisdom with our Carbondale audience.
And so some of your questions are coming in. I'm going to start with a question for all four of you. And if you could try and keep your answers to 2 minutes or less, because a lot of questions are coming in. But this one I'd like to hear from all four of you. And that is, this is titled In Search of the Future. And we, especially with those of us that are part of the Global Peace Tribe, try to keep things inspirational. So the opening question is, why are you positive? Why do you have a positive vision for our future? And I think we'll start with I Am Sophia.
Hello, everybody. I love the first episode. I'm so excited for you guys to get this out there and that we're having these conversations. The way I am positive and know deep in my cellular being that there is hope for the future is because of the microcosmic reflection in my daily reality. I know that the macrocosm of social media can paint the other story, right? That it's doomsday, that we're self-destructing and humanity has no hope. But my interactions with fellow humans, with fellow star family in my community, wherever I travel, whoever I attract, I know you were talking about the trust frequency and you attract what you vibrate. I see it everywhere I look. I see it everywhere I am. And so that tells me and that gives me the confirmation within my knowing that humanity is aligning with the timelines that are in our highest good. Do I think some humans are aligning with timelines that are not? Of course I do, but we live in a full spectrum reality. And so I am holding the vision that we are surpassing our ancestors and rising to a new state of earth, to a new earth. And I feel that deep, deep, deep in my soul.
Beautiful. Thank you very much, Sophia. Let's hear from Susan.
Okay. Well, I'll keep this because that's really beautiful, what was just shared. So thank you so much. Honestly, for me, this is, I make a joke that no matter what happens in this world, and there, to us personally as well, I don't know anybody who's been on this journey trying to bring out these types of truths that has had an easy road, right? It's been a bit of a challenge. And of course, there's been also interference from, the powers that be that don't want the truth of what this is to really get out. So, we've been at this for a long time, and I've known Connie for 30 years. We said a decade or so. I'm like, how about like triple that, girl? So we've got like 3 decades here. I remember my incarnation. I actually remember coming from Source. And then I do remember coming to Earth and going into my mom's womb. And what I remember the most was how excited I was to come on behalf of the Creator to be of service. And that love and that ecstasy and that joy was something that I remembered, and I'm always grateful that that memory was intact, because it's not a memory of a cognition, it's a memory of a feeling connected to God, connected to Source. And I said to myself, I said, well, I don't think I would have that feeling if we don't do this and do it well. So that's always been my barometer that no matter how silly, strange, unusual things look here, that we will get to that point. We will get to that cosmic party. We will get to that state of connection and love that we all know in our hearts, not only as possible, but when we do that with other people, man, what that feels like and what that looks like is just really incredible. So that's what gives me hope. It's like, I don't think I'd come to the planet if I didn't have, like, without that enthusiasm, if we don't do this. So that's what I'd like to share. Thank you, Scott.
Beautiful, Susan. How amazing to have the memory of coming into this reality. That's unique. Not too many people have that memory. That's beautiful. Here's Leigh McCloskely. We're catching him before he takes another bite. I'd love to hear your response to the question, Leigh. I just need you to unmute. Leigh, you're still muted.
God, and I was so brilliant. Why I'm optimistic is I'm sitting in the middle of it. That the permutation of my art and the hieroglyph of the human soul, my 17-year journey with the tarot, revisioned and revisiting the arcana, and realizing that my questions were about the theater of the psyche. Why are we wired the way we are? And if the story keeps repeating doom and gloom, and it's the end of time and every time, then maybe that's not the thing to pay attention to. And so I opened my home in 1981, and for the next 45 years, I've held weekly discussion groups in my home. I had 25 years of a theosophy study group here. And to balance that, because that's primarily Eastern esotericism, I had a Western inner traditions group here. But I also collected these books, and my father, who was a painter, said, when you can no longer talk about something, paint it. And my profession, my first love was being an actor and theater, and not the belief systems, but how do we embody? So experientially, I entered evil characters, and I learned from them, which helped me a great deal with when I entered the tarot, to not be a believer, not to be a metaphysical adept, but to enter it with a type of humility. I really don't know. In the same way, if you play King Lear, you wouldn't say, oh, I've got this. And I feel that part of the element here, and I think it's a missing key, is the key of place. I live and am the custodian of a sacred land that the Chumash honored and lived here. I'm the white guy on Indian land. What do you do with that? Well, you start to back up into this story of the hieroglyph of the human soul and this revelation that began on 9/11/2001 when the towers in New York came down, and I fell on my knees. And I said, these false erections of money and God have collapsed. What do I tell my children? What do I tell my daughters? What do I tell my wife? That being human matters, that it's noble, and no one gets out of it alive. So let's do something while we're here. And I started not with a conceit. No one would paint everything in a room. No one would spend 25 years every day in a grand meditation with people always circulating here, always coming. A lot of you have come to events here. And I feel this is the vital energy of attraction, of coherence, of the forgotten garden of the human soul, which, like a library, is not in any one time or book, but is the nature of all times and all books. And that's why the mother returns here, Sophia, the ancestors, the archetypes, because it returned to first technology. My passion, my dedication, my love of these ideas, not to take, but like a beloved to become worthy of. And that's why this is my home. And that's why I'm so glad we're here tonight. Because I think the last key is intimate. I don't think it's a grand new philosophy or ideology. I think art is our greatest revelation. Because whether it's music or poetry or love, it's the stuff that allows us to dream. And then when we dream, we breathe. And when we come together like this, we breathe together. And in that ensemble, we become an attractive force. I wrote about this because all the books we've read over the years were initiating us. They were mentoring us. Because the last question would not be what's wrong with the neighbor or how do we save the earth, but how do we remain positive? Because we're not building that which is to change the world, but vessels that allow us to navigate the present moment, and in so doing, cultivate, I'm convinced, the art of being human, known as the human form divine. That's why I'm optimistic. Thanks for my sermon.
Leigh, what a wordsmith you are. Beautiful. Thank you so much. And you not only paint with art, but you paint with your words, clearly.
It comes from passion.
Let's hear from Patrick McCollum. Patrick, why are you optimistic about our future?
Well, first of all, because Leigh's my friend. So that helps a great deal. There's several different levels, but I'll talk about a couple of them. So one, I'm an international peacemaker, and I've been doing this work for about 55, almost 56 years. And I've had the opportunity to interact with about 40 different countries and people from there. And one of the things I've noticed as a peacemaker is 99.999% of the world, people all are wanting good, are all wanting to have a positive future. They're all hopeful that things will go well. And then there's this 1/10 of 1% who's trying to control everybody else and make the world a bad thing. And we all get kind of stuck in those situations. But a project that I'm working on right now is really profound for me. And that is that I am leading a project to assemble 100 indigenous prophecy carriers from across the world. So I'm bringing them from the highest mountains in Nepal, the South Pacific, Siberia, South America, United States and Canada, Australia, New Zealand, the entire world. And what I've noticed different about them from what we all hear about the doom and gloom and all the bad stuff's going to happen is they all say in their prophecies that there would come a time that people would be really focusing on gloom and doom and all that stuff, but that there would be a definite opportunity and a road that we could take where we would, what they say, follow the original instructions, where humanity could come into not only a relationship with itself in a beautiful way, but with the people from the stars. And so we're going to be doing that this December in Bhutan, taking 100 prophecy carriers there, and they're going to share across the entire world their thoughts about this. And so between just seeing human beings and knowing most human beings are good and want peace and a beautiful world, and then hearing this wisdom from the ancient prophecy carriers whose wisdom has been shut down for all these centuries. The only prophecies and wisdom we hear are from people who say the whole world's going to go down and we're all going to kill each other and we're going to blow ourselves up and it's like the end of the world. So this is an entirely different story. And I'd like to close by saying this. I've come to believe that the world we live in is created by the story we choose to live in. It's all about the story, nothing else. And so we need to create a new story for humanity. And people like my friends here are helping to create that. And Andrew and Connie, that's the focus of their entire thing, this thing of coming in the correct vibration where everybody's on the same page. And so I'm very optimistic and very hopeful.
Beautiful. Thank you, Patrick.
For me, the earth is shifting frequencies, and in the higher frequencies, there's more information. And so we're accessing more information, which is that we are one. We were in a lower frequency. The whole earth was in a lower frequency of separation and fear and scarcity. And now it's moving into a higher frequency, and it's pulling us forth into this higher frequency where we're seeing that we are one. If you heard it on so many people's lips, we are one, this illusion of separation, that wasn't spoken about 10 years ago. It's on our lips now because we're getting into that knowing that we are one, and there's more abundance than we can fathom in this higher frequency. So there's no one to fight with, nothing to fight over. So peace on earth becomes a given. The laws are expanded. It's a completely different reality in the higher frequency. So this is all part of the process of getting into that frequency. So we have to trust the process.
Fantastic. There was a question, are there negative ETs? Are there negative ETs? And so would anybody like to tackle that question? Well, if nobody wants to, I will, because I have been in this field for a pretty long time. And I would say that there are absolutely, from a lot of the sources that I've worked with for decades, there are some ET races that treat humans the same way that our scientists treat laboratory animals. Most of us love dogs and cats and rats and little furry critters, but there are human beings that are scientists that in the name of progress will do pretty horrible things to lab rats or even other species of animals in order to make progress and to learn. So yes, there's that. Then if you want to go really, really dark, and I'm not going to go down this road too far, but there are a lot of credible people. I was just watching last night the Farsight Institute and what they're sharing about the reptilian races and some of the reptilian races that do some pretty funky things with human beings. So, of course, it's all what you choose to believe and what information you choose to gather. But I would say that there are personally, bring on the Pleiadians, right? But from what I've heard and seen, and certainly people I've spoken to have had negative alien abductions, there are some dark races as well. Do any of our presenters want to? Yes, Susan, I think I saw you raise your hand.
Yeah, so I mean, from my own experience, I don't have negative encounters with extraterrestrial beings. The only negative encounters that I had around this topic was interference from, I guess we call it deep state military. So that would be that, to share that. But I did participate in research with the Beyond UFOs, the Science of Consciousness and Contact that was published in 2018. And we looked at about almost 5,000 contactees from all around the world, and we asked them about the nature of their contact. And 85% of them said that the contact was either neutral or benevolent. And so, it's a smaller percentage, looking at about 10-15% that said that their contact was, they wouldn't want it to happen again because of, something that occurred with them. So, when you look at that large number of people who got a tremendous amount of information. By the way, that is one of the best resources that I'd say has some pure information in it. Like I said, it was published in 2018. There was about 10 PhD researchers and myself that came up with this research and analyzed the results on this one. And the revelation was that most people, because of contact, they learned to not have as much materialism in their lives. They didn't fear death. They were here to help raise vibration, to feel a sense of love, understand that the universe is a living system as well, understand that the earth also needs healing. So the level of awareness because of contact was such a profound, almost akin to a near-death experience that someone has. So there was a much smaller percentage, again, you're looking at 10-15%, that said that their contact wasn't something that they wanted to have happen again because of something that was negative. So, and again, we didn't follow up with these people, but it'd be really interesting to see where we're at now if those people still felt, similar. So I think that may be helpful to people that are learning about this for the first time. And again, because there's so much information now that's coming out in mainstream media, again, this fear narrative that's there, which is extremely different than what most of us are saying, if not all of us are saying on this panel here today, that yes, there's some experiences which may not be so lovely. And however, when you look at this entire arena, there's far more good, benevolent than there is negative, and hopefully that's helpful.
Yeah, absolutely, Susan. Thank you very much. Patrick has something to say.
Yeah, so I just wanted to respond to that I've talked to a few people who, had experiences who saw it as being negative, and my assessment of them really was that it was just a frightening experience for them. And I just try to think of the average person, walking in the woods and all of a sudden a spaceship or something, comes there. People are basically fearful, especially certain groups of people. Like I have neighbors in the wilderness area that are very afraid of their neighbors because they have certain beliefs and they don't want to talk to their neighbors because they might not go to heaven or something like that. And so I think that a lot of the people that have negative experiences, or at least think of them that way, are really just frightened about the experience altogether. And I wanted to share one more thing that's not in the movie, but I think is an important thing. And that is on my driveway where I said that these first aliens crashed, 8 miles farther down my 30-mile long driveway is a cave that's been dated about 11,500 years ago. And inside it has a cave drawing. And the cave drawing is 3 spaceships in the sky, an alien being coming down to meet indigenous people who are going up a stairway and reaching out to them. And on top of that big butte where the cave is a giant rock formation, like a 1/4 mile in diameter, that's a big circle with like an X, like land here. And so I just think that there's a lot of that kind of stuff, and when they start bringing all these things together in our government, there'll be a lot to try to understand. And the last thing I wanted to say, which a lot of people don't know, is the area where the aliens for the Roswell thing first crashed is where they discovered the very first uranium. They made the atomic bomb for the Manhattan Project. And I wonder also if there's a connection of that for some reason, whoever's out there was either looking to that or trying to follow what was happening as humans were looking at that energy or power. So that's all I had to say.
We've never had this conversation before, Patrick, even though we've known each other for a long time. When I was producing television on UFO topics, I was in charge of all the UFO stories for the Paranormal Borderline, and then went on to become supervising producer on a show called Strange Universe. And it took me 2 years, but I got a man named Frank Kaufman to share his story. Frank was the head of the CDC, which was the forerunner to the CIA, stationed in Roswell, New Mexico in 1947. And very briefly, Roswell was where the very first and only atomic bomb squadron was. It was the 509th Squadron, and it was the only one that had atomic weapons. And we have to remember, it's only 2 years after World War II. The Cold War was ramping up. We had atomic bombs, and of course, the Russians really wanted them as well. So Frank was stationed in Roswell. His job was to ferret out Soviet spies. When the crash happened, they thought initially it was a Soviet spy plane that had gone down. So Frank went out, and he was among the first people there, saw the downed crash, but of course could not say anything about it for decades, because back then, people who knew too much, if they spoke up, they were silenced one way or the other. But Frank, by the 1990s, was dying of cancer. And after watching my programs and me corresponding for 2 years with him, he agreed to come on the show, Strange Universe, and tell his story. So someday we'll have to compare notes even more thoroughly. But there is no doubt. And what we do know is that the craft was actually taken to Wright-Patterson Air Force Base. As you said, one of the aliens did survive, although he later passed on. Our beloved Andrew and Connie have their hand up, so I'm going to go over to them.
So I just wanted to say on the subject of the negative aspect that, again, it's a frequency thing. So I'm just saying to folks, keep your vibration high, keep your attention and focus on the high frequency, on the high vibration, on what's in your heart, trust your heart, and just keep that vibration high. And that's what they're waiting for. These heart-centered ETs are waiting for us to open our hearts and get into that frequency so that we can work together for the betterment of all of creation. So,
Connie, the heart, I think this is key, because essentially the point being that what we're discovering is that we live in a thought form. As Einstein said, reality is a thought form, or a thought slowed down to a rate where we can perceive it. And this helps us understand, because one of the problems we have is we live in a scientific and religious overlord. In other words, a type of literalism, a set of facts and data that if you believe this, you will have the structure of reality well in hand. But we find the third element is actually neither. And this is where the arts come in, the resolution, the alchemy, that, as Connie's saying, that we live in energetic fields, in sentience. And we have been taught as human beings that, oh no, it's just objective. But any dancer, singer, performer knows that you are lifted by an energy as you cross a threshold and begin to engage energy. You feel them directly. And because I have been so immersed in the deep unconscious since I was very young, I've realized that the point is that, as Connie's saying, it's not over-identification. Part of my work was to build an ark, not to navigate physical waters, but mental waters. That the footprint of who we are as human is being forgotten. And what I realized is that we are the technology, and that the challenges that come to us, and I found this when I had a lot of out-of-body experiences, lucid dreams, that the more I allowed something to create fear in me, the more real it became, and the more fixed it seemed to be. It challenged me continually to drop my energy, and this is why a lot of my work is a mental martial art. In other words, what are we actually perceiving? And in ancient texts, there's always that saying, become a knower of the real. And what does that mean? You must center yourself, not project it outward, because if you are fearful, you will amplify the fear. It's finding that sense of, how am I able to finally hold not just the frequency, but the realization, what Connie's talking about, the harmonics of consciousness. And I use the description here. We can see we're surrounded by books and paintings and universes, but they're all in a coherent state. None are in opposition or angry at one another. They're holding place. And this is part of the maturing aspect we're going through. Can we hold place? Can we become the center by which the holographic universe finally finds an interface through the human being that realizes that what saves us is our capacity to tell the story, as Patrick said. And the story is saying, if it's true, it must include all of us. And that's why I feel this sense of that where there is dark, yes. It's like you've got Hades and you've got the heavens, always. And it's like the piano, the archetypes. You don't extinguish a set of keys. You realize that it's an instrument. So the question becomes, how do I play it? And I really do feel this is where it becomes very helpful to move away from good and bad beings. And, what is it? There's neither good nor bad, but thinking make it so.
Thank you, Leigh. Thank you. We're going to hear from Sophia for a little bit. And I've got actually a question from Missy Galore. I don't know if you know Missy, but you two are of a very similar vibration. You're both magnificent. And she writes, in some ways, contact feels very kinesthetic. Do you have any special prep that you do to connect for contact and to discern the feedback that you receive? And then finally, what is your favorite way to encourage and sustain heartful living Levolution? And that seems like a good question for you, Sophia.
I love that question. Did she say Levolution? What a great word.
Yeah, we've got the king of Levolution with us tonight, Reverend Jeffrey Baldbrook.
So the first part of that question, if I am remembering clearly, was around how to get yourself into a place of making contact. Was that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. So, my story is kind of all over the place. My first contact experience started not intentionally. I had contact with these beings known as the Arcturians. And through the last 10 years, they've taught me how to connect with them through meditation and astral projection. And so I would say the best, most direct way that you can connect with these beings is by creating your inner world, is by connecting and tuning in with your inner world, because this is how they can reach you. The heart truly is the portal. And so quieting your mind and getting rid of the monkey mind and the chach and getting to a 0 point where you can recalibrate your energy with the quantum, Akashic record with the quantum field. It's easier for us to increase our vibrations through meditation, through breath, through loving, through the heart. So we can meet them in these middle zones rather than them dematerializing their high vibrational energy into the third dimensional realm. So if you are really wanting to make contact, I would say the first step would be to find that practice within yourself, with meditation, with breath work, with quieting your mind so that you can enter your heart. And when you get into that space and you start doing it as a practice, you're much more likely to start having these glimpses of experiences with them. And a key thing is that we have the contract of free will here on earth. And so whether it's a malevolent or a benevolent being, they have to be invited into your field. So if you're wanting to connect with the benevolent beings, it's important to, as you're going into that place and you're developing your inner world and your inner practice to connect with them, to call upon them, to invite them, and making sure you're calling upon the malevolent energies and the graces of God and the angelic realm, because that's how I view extraterrestrials. They are angels. And so in order for you to connect with the angelic heavenly realms that they're in is by opening that heart chakra portal and getting out of your mental ego mind if you can. So just that daily practice. And I also found inviting them into my dreams before I go to sleep, the very last thing I say is I call in my guides. I welcome them to make contact with me in the astral realm, in the notion that I am completely protected in my Merkaba. And 9 times out of 10, when I wake up the next morning, I remember a very lucid experience with them. So the dream realm is also a very potent place to connect with them. And there was a second part of that question. And can you remind me what it was, Scott?
Yes. What's your favorite way to encourage and sustain heartful living lovolution?
I love this question. I would say for me, in my personal reality, grounding into the vibrational awareness that everything that is around us is what we are emanating. And so, how I can show up in the world and encourage others to show up in the world is by tuning in again to the heart chakra frequency, to the portal that we have here. The heart is ultimately going to be what activates us into these brighter futures, right? Because we have fear and we have love, and those are the two superpowers that we're up against right now. And so the more that you can align with the love, and love doesn't mean sunshine and roses all the time. Sometimes love is full spectrum and it's heavy and it's difficult and it's challenging, but staying anchored into that love no matter what and not letting the fear control your vibrational being, I think is the most direct way that humanity is going to cause this levolution, is by really anchoring and staying true and devoted to the heart and the heart portal.
Beautiful. Thank you so much, Sophia. Right along those, what you just said, I'm going to read something from a fellow named Stone Hobbit. He writes, "At first, I was unaware of as I was experiencing fear." And he reminds us that fear can be seen as an acronym for false evidence appearing real. Then it changed and I became willing to experience. And then, and in the now, is communication and connection. So thank you for that.
Can I say something real quick about the negative
course.
beings and fear?
Yeah.
when I went through my phase where I was really trying to learn from the Arcturians around, like, why are there malevolent beings and what are they interested with humanity? And what they communicated to me is that a lot of the abduction experiences that people have that you spoke of, is as you have said on this panel, is the situation itself that caused fear for them. And I just want to share the symbolism. They said, think about it in terms of bringing your dog or your cat to the vet, right? To them, they're being experimented on, they're being prodded, they're getting shots, they're getting their nails clipped. It's terrorizing for them. My dog hates it when I go to the vet. He hates it there, but it's for his highest good. I'm taking care of him. And so a lot of these beings as well, like some of them don't have good intention, but some of them who are experimenting on us actually do have good intention. We're just experiencing it from an unfamiliar place. And so it seems scary and it seems evil, but it's actually not.
That's a great point. We've had Whitley Strieber on the Awakening World show several times. And of course, Whitley probably is the most famous abductee. And when he first wrote Communion, it was kind of a horror book almost. But Whitley's whole evolution has been coming around from exactly what you just shared, realizing that it actually was all about his awakening of consciousness. And so that's a really important point of view. I'm going to bring up our other panelists. And this is a question which any of you that want to respond to. There seem to be two different schools of thought about our future. Well, many schools of thought, but one is that we're entering what some people call the bifurcation, that there's going to be some sort of a splitting of worlds. Now, we do know through quantum physics that everything exists to the degree with which it's imagined, and that there are multiple timelines. So there's the multiple timeline bifurcation vision for the future, that some people are going to kind of ascend to rainbows and unicorns, and others are going to stay in different vibratory levels of planet Earth. Others take the more bodhisattva approach that we all have to grow and evolve together. So curious if any of you have a perception about the future, since again, we're talking about in search of the future. Do you perceive we are heading towards a bifurcation, or is the bifurcation constantly happening? Or do you believe that all of humanity needs to move into one new world together?
The bifurcation is within oneself. The world is whole. The state is holy. One's dissonance creates resistance. It becomes fascinating to think about the time we're in being truly a time of cumulative wisdom and revelation. That's why where I'm sitting is a painted cave on ancestral land, meaning that it returns us to the truth that nothing has changed in terms of the tools. It has always been a process, an alchemy, a cultivation of why is being human so difficult? And what is the point? The question Job asked, essentially, and answered with, I will still love you in spite of everything. And to me, that is the human spirit. I will still love you in spite of everything. This is what the walls shout here. The library shouts, the passion beyond life and death shouts. What do you think you're part of? A noble, remarkable evolution of consciousness itself, the capacity to hold unique identity and shared reality, and at the end of the day, to realize that any blossom has to do not with one petal standing alone, but an opening of each to one another, as we do in this room, as we do in the tarot wheel with the archetypes, where they turn and look at each other, as we do with the mandala that we see here that comes from the Phoenix Arise painting above there. So art, creation, breath, passion, dedication, humanity is telling us that the last key is returning home, a bit like Dorothy in The Wizard of Oz. She went to Oz and she saw color in Munchkins, and wow, what was the first thing she wanted? I want NEM. I don't care if it's black and white. I don't care if it's difficult. I want to be with the people I love. And that's why I have such respect for the nobility of who we are, because we were never given a handbook, never given any clues. And I feel all of the orbs, all of these things like crop circles, like this room, like the watcher language within which this has been woven, It's not to answer a story any more than love answers a question. It resets the value of the question itself. What do you love? Not what do you hate? What are you against? And that's why when this painting of mine, Phoenix Arise, reveals in a fractal mathematical geometrical message, because it'll say the same thing in 10,000 years, because it's a fixed message that you are a phoenix, not born into time, but into creation, that you are whole and holy, that you are holographic, and that you are the outcome of this entire journey, which is why your DNA reveals that code to you. That it was not to escape the condition, but as we see from the phoenix, but to endure the condition in the same way a flower does. And it would reach a point where we were holding on so tight because we had withstood the future so strongly by being so internalized. And with this losing our grip, well, actually, it started here 45 years ago with just linoleum in an empty room. And it said, we must cultivate like gardeners. We must be those that cultivate place, not complaint. If we want to be custodians of who and what we are, then we must be grateful librarians of the story we contain. And so that's why I'm optimistic, because it's not about a future with more cyborgian, Muskian cyborgs. It's going to be when we realize that our divine technology awakens because of the questions we ask. And I use this art as proof now, because it is multidimensional, it is beauty, and when you enter it, it holds you and it doesn't judge you. It says, welcome home. And for me, the story needs to be beautiful and human and intimate and passionate, and to include my family and to include all of us. Otherwise, it's a lousy story, and I won't import any lousy stories anymore. That's when I quit on 9/11/2001. I'm not following that narrative. And that's when the artists joined me and said, neither would we. And guess what? You're an artist of consciousness. Everyone watching. That's why we're watching. It's not to shout. It's to whisper the truth. That those that attend remember, and those that don't never do. But that's their story, not ours. And to my that's how I feel. Why I'm optimistic. You can tell I'm passionate.
Boom. Beautiful. Thank you, Leigh. Thank you. Wow. Well, fortunately, we have Patrick McCollum, who might be the only person who could possibly follow that up. Take it away, Patrick.
I've known Leigh for a long time. You can never follow him up. So, you just can present. So first of all, I agree with pretty much everything he said. From a practical point of view, and in the work that I do, and in particular in working with the indigenous peoples for a very long time and their view of where we're headed, they do believe there's a bifurcation of what is coming, but not in the way that you would look in that, some of us are going to ascend to another reality and the other people are going to remain earthly or something like that. Their perspective is much more practical and very, just earthly, basically. And what it says is that human beings will come to understand the original instructions. And those that do will find or create a future that will be, a beautiful thing. Not beautiful in that they'll turn into light beings and, go into outer space or something like that, but that they, within the world we live in right now, will have a beautiful world where everything kind of works. And so I've asked them many times, what are the original instructions that they're talking about? And they say that nature is a guidebook created by the divine that has all the answers. And that the basics of the original instructions are that recognize that diversity itself is sacred. One of the very first questions asked with indigenous people was, look around you and point to any two flowers that are the same, any two trees, any two deer, any two rabbits, and any two human beings. It might be that you and I, Scott, and Andrew all look like guys or something somehow, but we're nothing like one another. And one of the downsides indigenous people say about current society and the way we move is we're all trying to make everyone into the same. like, and they believe that we've mixed up to all become one with the idea of we all need to be one, like the same person. It's like, everybody uses this hook to try to bring in, hey, if you're just Catholic, it's all going to be okay. Or if you're just, somebody who believes this or that, it's going to be all okay. What they say is it's all okay to start with. Everything is sacred. There's nothing to be like, tweaked to get to be to the sacred. We simply need to acknowledge it in every step we take, and then recognize, as I said, that diversity is sacred, which they believe will stop all the problems between human beings. And the last one is they say that the story that we live in is not the true story. If in the movie that you saw about me, you saw some of the Kogi elders, and I was sharing that we live in one story and they live in a different story. And the story they live in, I just went up there and visited them, and these tribes have been there for 9,000 years. And I asked them, what do you do about crime? And they said, we don't allow it. And I said, well, what about domestic violence? We have never had it. What about war? It's not appropriate. We have never allowed it. And so I just think that we need to change our perspective of what it is we think is possible and what we want, and then head towards that. And I do think in the answer to this bifurcated thing, it isn't that everybody that goes the way that isn't the beautiful way are all going to be destroyed and killed and stuff. But definitely, if you just look at the world, are headed away where a lot of people are going to get hurt, destroyed, taken down by other people. And it's happening right now. And so, we need to get a handle on that and move to a place where we just learn to love one another and love the sacredness of where we are and where we've been put, which doesn't only include planet Earth. It includes everything, right? Anyway, so much for that. Not so eloquent as my friend Leigh, but that's kind of what I think.
Doing just fine with that. Doing just fine. Fun to me, Connie and Andrew have their hand up. And so the camera is on you with whatever you want to share.
Well, I just wanted to share about what we were speaking of as far as the bifurcation of the earth, etc. There's a lot of talk of two earths happening. And it to me, it's a frequency thing again, that the different frequencies are splitting so that they're not interacting with each other anymore. So people in one frequency aren't seeing people in another frequency. So it can be that the dimensions are in fact splitting so that people who choose a higher frequency just aren't going to be involved with any of what's going on in the lower frequencies. And people who choose the lower frequency get to do all that in their reality. So there's something going on with the whole split of frequencies of Earths. Who knows what it's going to result in.
I do want to speak a little bit about the bifurcation because it's something that I did see in visions that I had as a kid. I think a lot of us that had contact, when we were younger, we've had a lot of visions about what's potential for, planet Earth and what may go on. And, like any good Earth steward here, you don't have an attachment to these visions. You just merely understand that they're there as a possibility for a potential future, so to speak. And one of the things that I did see that I would say to Connie's point, and Patrick, I think you alluded to this a bit as well. What I did see is there's different densities that people are operating on, and for those that have a bit of a more dense existence, because of that compression. We talk about fear. What are we really talking about? It's a compression. That oxygen isn't there, so to speak, moving through the heart, moving through the mind, that connection with the field as well. And so that density seems to play itself out in a number of different ways that aren't so lovely. And yet that higher vibration, well, there's more oxygen, there's more connection, there's more rapid quantum positive connection as well. And so that is one of the things that I did see play out. And again, I don't have an attachment to it, but that being a possibility. And this is, I think some of us here, we have different connections. Yes, I relate a lot to the Pleiadians. That seems to be something that I relate to. And of course, some of the creator beings. But the reason why I'm sharing that is my to-do here on Earth really strongly is about the connection to the Earth and the connection to the Earth and our sun as it relates to these planetary changes. People talk about solar flares, and the different energies that are here. And what I try to teach people to do is to have that attunement with the Earth. It's almost like, we're riding a surfboard. If anybody's ever surfed out there, you're surfing these waves, and you can get taken down by the wave, or you can actually learn how to ride it and stay above, and have a great ride with it. And I do think that speaking about the bifurcation, that we have the sun that's acting as this great impetus with the Earth as well. Of course, as it's connected in the interstellar medium, I bring that up because it's such an, we think about the future, obviously, but then there's the immediate here and now that's happening on a dynamic process on a minute by minute, second by second basis. And our Earth is so reactive right now. And human beings, we are waking up. People are waking up. These energies are such a great awakening. And I just wanted to share that, with everybody on here. And I always think that this is funny that we talk about alien, right? Like it's some foreign entity. Anything with my contact experiences, and I'm sure so many people can attest to this. It's made us more human than alien. It's made us more relatable to one another than different. And it's a great connector. So thank you for allowing me a couple of minutes there, Scott. I appreciate that. And I think it is what we choose. Everyone has been saying that. And minute by minute, we have the opportunity to choose something that is much more beneficial for ourselves and our children.
Beautifully stated.
And also, one of the keys in a word is metamorphosis. That the state we are in the same way as everything in this environment, in the art, in the expression, is that what was happening is we're being triggered. And we think from an alchemical proposition, it's not for or against any. It's really navigating these energies because they are triggering adaptation, enforcing that one cannot simply choose good or bad, right or wrong, because in that we begin to integrate the field. And that's why I think it's really important Susan said this relationship to Gaia and Earth, the one, the entity, the being that we all are, because this story then does become, in metamorphosis, the season of blossoming. And if we think about a blossom, that the flower itself doesn't destroy its own infrastructure, it shifts how it uses its own energies. And I feel that this is the metamorphic pulse going on, because the overwhelm, the last flood was water, this flood is information, I was told, and that's what began all of this. So much of this is to honor the sense that it's not in the optics, it's not in the seeming chaos of good and bad, evil and wicked. Those are all archetypes. They're all symptomatic. One is not real and another false. They are a type of feedback system. When this is understood, we become much more capable of navigating the illusion we have been taught to call reality, because going back to what Connie said, reality is love with a capital L. And that sees it through illusion, but it also sees the responsibility that one is not alone. One is responsible for the story they share. That's it.
Beautiful, Leigh. Thank you. I'm going to go to Sophia. We haven't heard from you for a little bit. And something I was wondering, Sophia, this is my introduction to you. And I loved your videos. I thought they were fantastic.
Thank you.
Our wonderful mind, Albert Einstein, talked a lot about imagination. And it seems to me that your videos were a beautiful example of you imagining conversations with our galactic family. I'd love to hear a little bit more about your imaginings and your experiences with our galactic family.
Yeah, thank you for asking that. These definitely are imaginative creations pulled from my experiences. I obviously haven't had these exact conversations because a lot of these videos are kind of goofy, but there's intention with that. I'm on a mission, as we all are on this call, to dispel the fear around our extraterrestrial family. And so by making these, quick little goofy, lighthearted videos, I'm hoping that it's shifting people's presentation of their relationship with this idea of an alien, because our mainstream movies are Predator and Doomsday and End of the World, and so I think giving these comedic videos allows people to view aliens a little bit more playfully, a little bit more humorously and lightheartedly. And so with my experiences with the Arcturians, it's been a journey, because I would say the first 5 years of connecting with them, I actually fell into a very deep depression and became suicidal at one point because I longed for my star family so much. But what they helped teach me, and that I'm very passionate about relaying, is that this human experience is a gift. Our human emotions are a gift. The sadness, the heaviness, the density, it's all part of this school. It's all part of this experience. So my relationship with them and of being human has shifted so much in the last few years around realizing that this human experience is not a prison sentence. This human experience is such a gift. We all chose to come here at this time. And these beautiful, benevolent beings that I've had the privilege of communing with and connecting with have allowed me to feel so grateful for this human vessel and this human body and this human experience. And so every time I've been down or feeling like I'm hopeless for humanity, and I tune in and I get that light, communion with them, because they're so light based. It's what I imagine a lot of people experience on drugs is what it feels like, when you encounter these beings that are so loving and so high vibrational. It's this all encompassing feeling of love in your body. And so that's to say that I'm trying to relay those experiences and the contact information I've received from them into my music and into these videos in a way that is easier digested by someone who might not initially believe in aliens, or might think that they are evil or here to kill humanity. It's a way that I can just lightly give them a different perspective of this family that we have that loves us so much. So I don't know if I even answered your question, but I'm very passionate about bringing humor and levity and lightheartedness. And it's been such a journey too, because when I first started releasing this music and these videos, I got so much hate, so many people that thought I was crazy, thought I needed to be institutionalized. And now, after not giving up and continuing to, shine my crazy freak colors that I'm so proud of, they now have a more loving relationship with aliens. And I've watched fans go from hating me and wanting to burn me at the stake to suddenly being curious about extraterrestrials and how they can find their star family and how we can receive them with love. And so, yeah, that's one of my biggest passions in this life is teaching people and showing, especially the younger generations, that these beings are not to be feared. These beings are pure love. I mean, a lot of them, not all of them, but so yes, so I put them in these comedy videos and these little musical clips to just give people a spark, just a little spark of awakening, and if they resonate with it, great, and if they don't, keep scrolling. I'm not here to be anybody's religion.
I think you're awesome.
Thank you. I think everyone on this call is awesome.
Well, and speaking of awesome, let's hear from Connie and Andrew.
Okay, there we are. Well, firstly, Sophia, I absolutely love what you brought to the film. When we first came up with the idea of putting your clips in there, and I hadn't seen them, and you have made me laugh 10 to 20 times every day for the last 3 weeks.
Yay! That's the goal. That's the goal.
I get it.
Laughter.
So
Laughter opens up the heart.
the laughter's there. Your alien is so cute for such an ugly little sucker. He's so adorable, which is very interesting that you can't help loving this rather, repellent creature when you first meet him. I mean, who's his dentist, for example,
Right, right.
Well, I think we're winding down. I'm going to go to Patrick. And if any of our presenters have a final word you want to share, just raise your hand, like Patrick has. And we'll go to each of you for a final thought. And let's turn over to our beloved Patrick McCollum.
Hey, so I just wanted to share something a little bit on the side a lot of people may not know. So I've been addressing the issues in here from the perspective of me as the peacemaker doing the work I do with the indigenous people. But for those who don't know, my major in college was astrophysics, and I wrote a theory called the photon deluminization theory about 35 or 40 years ago. And it includes things about interdimensionality and light being this singular thing that's tying all these things together and allows for all these different things in our conversations that we've had. ETs, moving to higher realms, all these kind of things. So somewhere in the future, maybe it'd be fun to talk about that a little bit. Oh, and tomorrow's my birthday. Yay.
Happy birthday.
Hey, well, let's go to gallery view and let's all send lots and lots of love to Patrick. The great Paramahansa Yogananda taught that the best prayer of all is just maximum grace. So let's all pray and hold the vision for Patrick. Maximum grace for Patrick McCollum, for radiant health, for healing. I know that he's got some health issues. Maximum grace that truly he can play his role in saving the world. We love you, Patrick. Maximum grace and happy birthday.
Thank you.
We love you, Patrick.
Yeah.
Happy birthday, man.
This is such a treat for us.
Yes.
Oh,
We
really
feel
true.
loved and beloved and just so happy we can share these voices and this knowledge and this wisdom with the world through our filming.
And Leigh, thank you for coming. And here you are, still here. Can't wait to come visit the beautiful hieroglyph again. It's been a while.
And I'm so delighted for you both because you are true champions and dedicated custodians of all things that matter. And as you know, one of my favorite mottos is say yes rather than yikes. And you're adding to the yes rather than the yikes, and that there is no reality, only probability. I choose this one, and I choose the one that you're honoring. And I think if we honor that together, like honoring Patrick as a prayer, I really feel that, this is the moment that we honor that it's not simply chaos. It is an emerging renaissance. There is an awakening. There is a rebirth. And if it doesn't include all of us, it's not the story. And that's the beauty of Gaia. She loves us all. And it's not about who to hate, but who to love and who to forgive.
Absolutely.
And welcome them.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
Leigh, did I hear that you're in the Painted Cave district of Santa Barbara?
Actually, Malibu. So I'm down with the Shumash petroglyphs.
Right.
Santa Barbara is.
Yeah, there's also a Painted Cave district in Santa Barbara that I'm very familiar with.
Which everyone should go to and to spend some time with, because I tell you, the ancestors are just waiting for us to come home.
Absolutely.
Not to leave, it's to finally be here now.